All right. Okay, we're back. Look at lunch. Hey, who was that artist that just played there? We gotta tell him. Zoe Bennett. Zoe Bentley. Of course, she's great. Zoe. We gotta get her back in here one of these days. Okay, we got Lori Verbeek here from Winona. Hi. Well, do you still live in Winona?
I do.
And you came all the way here today?
Yes.
Just to be on the show?
Yes.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
So welcome. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having
I
me.
think Lori feels she has a really a valuable story, I think, to share and to help others that have been in the same situation. And as I said, you were listening to the show before us a couple of weeks ago, and it really resonated with you. And I think it's important, too. So maybe you could just give us a bit of background. And
Well, it's a passion of mine to share, to give people an idea that when you become depressed, that there's choice. When I became depressed, I have 4 kids, and after my husband left, I had never been out on my own. I lived with my parents, and then I moved and got married and had kids, and after a while, the marriage broke up. And I have these 4 children between 5 months old and 10 years old, and reality hits that I'm by myself with these kids. And the only thing available to me was medication, which I'd always been raised that you don't do meds and you don't take meds. But it was all that was offered, and I'm a person that I want a solution. If I'm not feeling good, I want to feel better. So I really want to share to anybody that is in this situation, whether you're just not feeling well or if it is full-blown depression, that you have choice.
Before we get into that,
Yeah.
I want to just kind of ask, because some people might be saying, how do I know if I'm depressed? I don't feel great, but I don't know if I'm clinically depressed. And it's kind of like there's no line that you cross.
Right.
It's a gradient, and it's kind of hard to tell. And so what was it for you that was like, okay, that's it. I got to do something about this. How were you feeling at that time?
I was having coffee with a friend, and I burst out crying. And I remember it was a day in February, and it was raining, and what's not to be depressed about? And it wasn't even a nice day out.
Winona can be nice, but not in February necessarily.
It was awful. And this friend said, I think you're depressed. And so I had been seeing a family counselor and my doctor, and so I went to them, and then I was assessed, and it was confirmed clinically, so they call it depression.
Yeah, but there's no test or anything like that. Right?
Exactly. I had a situation where I was actually introduced to neurolinguistic programming. And neurolinguistics is just the study of how the mind works. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
A little bit, yeah.
And so, anyway, what happened was I went for neurolinguistic counseling, and then that's how I worked through the through the depression. And all of a sudden, I got this thought: I'm depressed again, and I was scared stiff. So I ran to my teacher, who was my counselor, and I said, "I think I'm depressed again." And so she says to me, "So what are you depressed about?" And I sat there, and I'm like thinking and nothing. And she goes, "Oh." And that was the end of it. And if I hadn't have had that, if I would have believed that, I could have held on to that thought. And
the belief that you were depressed.
Just the belief that I was depressed.
So you had the choice, and you just said, "No, I'm not."
When she challenged it and said, "So what's depressing you? And what are you depressed about?"
you're bringing up, it's a huge expansion for us to understand this whole thing about choice. What is it, do you think, that we resist it? Why do we resist the simplest of solutions, which is we are what we think about? So if we think we're depressed, we're going to be depressed. And
well, in my experience, it's easier for me to blame somebody else than to take my own choice.
And better, too.
Oh, it works in the moment until I recently found myself doing that, and it was a huge awakening for me to see that I'm not a victim. I have choice. Through all this work, even my kids will come to me, which is really an honor. They'll come in with a problem, and all I can offer them is choice. You know, you could keep doing what you're doing and hope for the best, or this is what's worked for me, and we can try this. And I'm actually surprised that they usually take the road, you know, where they work on the solution.
Okay. So,
Because really what you're talking about is the ability to be responsible. And in that word, obviously, is response. So
Right.
if we can, do you find it slowing down, or is it
Well,
just...
For me, what I worked with, like for neurolinguistic programming, and then in the journey, and the journey is there's a lot of neurolinguistic programming in the journey, and that's the choice, like that's the solution that I bring and we work with.
So for people that are listening that don't understand what the journey is, could you
Okay.
just explain that
Yeah.
process? Or
What the journey is for me, I found truth in myself with the journey. It's a process you do, which is a guided meditation. And we have events in our life that they're unresolved. And one way I look at this is I imagine an event in my life, and could I actually, in truth, say, I might be mildly upset with somebody. Can I forgive that person? Can I, you know, in my mind, you know, maybe the guy cut me off in traffic. So can I actually look at him in my mind and wholeheartedly say, I forgive you? And if the answer is no, then we do what's called a journey process. These events can come up spontaneously, depending, they're tied to emotion, they're tied to cell memories, at the root of disease. I had a cold sore with a memory, and when I got to the memory of it, it was gone. And I know people that have had much more serious ailments, and the same thing happens.
It's really fascinating, actually, because I was having a conversation with someone earlier today about creating an energy medicine conference. And funnily enough, our next guest is talking about energy, but fossil fuels, and
Right.
kicking that addiction to them, if you will. But on the level we're talking about, I think that the allopathic medical world is starting to understand how powerful energy is, and that we can actually start managing it in our own environment, which is
Right.
what you're talking about. And so I take it the journey process is consciousness.
Yes.
When you talk about a guided meditation, and even the word consciousness, I think everyone is beginning to understand now in a way that 5 or 10 years ago people would have rolled their eyes and, what are you talking about? And because even now I see taking consciousness into business. You know,
Yes.
what's that? But we do understand what it means. It means being yourself, being responsible for your actions. And when you talk about NLP, your words, and they're very, very powerful, and they're vibrations that we send out.
And for me, it's been finding truth. I remember one time when I was with Annette Nolan, who was here on the
Yeah,
show.
Annette's been a guest on the show.
Yeah.
Which-
And she...
He's playing with his energy.
no,
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not. I'm just trying to send a subtle message to the camera people over there.
Oh,
You know that, you know, when you're talking, Lori, the camera should be on you. And Nikki Hayes, when you're talking, the camera should be on you.
Oh, I prefer it on Lori.
And I was happy the way it was. So I was, we were working on our journey processes for our practitioner, and Annette said something to me, and I don't know if you've ever experienced when you hear something and it really means something, but you don't know what it is, and it just sits there. Well, she said that, you know, you don't have to do a journey process on something to have change. If you can see something in pure truth, a shift will occur. And now, I've experienced it, and the more truth I see, the better I feel.
So it's kind of like the journey process is a way to get there, right?
It is. It definitely is.
And maybe we're on this evolving, you know, as individuals and as
Humanity.
society, evolving, getting a little bit closer to that ability to see things in pure truth, right?
Right.
So the journey process is one way to get there. But what you're
Exactly.
saying is that really, at some point, we're just, I mean, the truth is kind of self-evident, right? We just have to get over all those layers of stuff that we put
We
in
have.
front of that. It's like that
Exactly.
drinking commercial. That was one of the jokes at the comedy club last night. It's like, really going to Newfoundland is like all those nice Newfoundland commercials, but really with a glass that keeps getting put in front of it. Sorry, back
That's
to
okay.
the back to the thing. But that's kind of like what we're doing. You know, we have to take those glasses away,
Right.
and we have to get to that truth.
And the other really important part is emotion. I don't know, I really see a shift. Like, it's like we're all, where I was looking for a solution in, you know, the pill out there. But maybe the truth or the solution is behind us in the emotion. And I've really experienced that when we can surrender to emotion, there is truth there.
Okay, now what does that mean exactly? Surrender to emotion.
And that's a hard question, and I'm working on it.
Yeah.
So I guess just letting go. Does that?
Right.
One of the analogies,
Okay.
actually, that I think is self-evident in regard to trying to get there is the arbitration system that's happening in the legal system, and people trying to. If you appreciate a courthouse is full of anger. That's about the only emotion in a courthouse is people that are angry and fighting with each other. So
I can vouch for that, Nikki Hayes.
So if you try to pull that back, that
Right.
process back to an
Yeah.
arbitration level, if people sit at a table long enough
Yeah.
and can feel their emotion and be honored in their emotion and be
Yeah.
recognized, you know what, that did hurt you, I appreciate that. Let me hear your side of it, let you hear mine, and we'll try to find some way to resolve this
Yeah.
without having to get caught up in the anger and having a judge. So it's that, in essence, is the physical manifestation of really what you're talking about.
And one way that I've actually found to diffuse anger, if I'm feeling anger, if I turn it around and look at, like, if I'm angry at you because you did something, if I turn it around and look at how I've done that myself, that's one way that I've really felt when I can really find the truth. And for me, if I relax into it, then that's kind of the surrender, is the relaxation. And sometimes it only comes a little bit at a time, but
Yeah.
that's worked for me.
And
And I'm
we're
working on it still.
So some people say that depression is, or at least can be, a sort of repressed anger, right? So all the stuff that you have gotten angry at over the years that maybe you suppressed because it was inappropriate to express it.
Well,
Is it?
for me, I don't know. I think it's whatever it is for the individual, and I can't know what it is for them. For me, I think it was just a whole bunch of things that I was ticked off about. And when I finally got them out and brought them to the surface, they just fell away.
And when you talk about you're not a victim, right? Realizing that it's not that guy
It's
that
no
did
one's
it.
fault. I had
It's-
choice.
Yeah, you have choice, but it's one thing to kind of understand that intellectually,
Yes,
You know?
I understand that.
and then it's another thing to like really,
Feel it in your
yeah,
body.
yeah, yeah.
And yeah,
So yeah, and it's like, how do you get there? I mean, because as you say that now, I go, yeah, that makes sense. But
Yeah.
on the other hand, I'm going, you know, if I'm ever really encountering that situation myself, am I really going to be mature enough to
maybe not.
do that? Probably not.
Well, there's a lot of things. It's funny you said that about, you know, you get it conceptually, because on my journey, I get these things conceptually, and I'm like, I really want to get it in my body. I want to know it. And I was recently away at another program called Visionary Leadership with The Journey, and I had an appointment with a body worker, and this appointment did not go the way I wanted it, and I was angry. And I was telling my story, which makes me a victim to people. And then it dawned on me, like, and I'm processing it, trying to process this anger any way I can and everything I know about it. And I'm sitting with it, and it's like, well, what's the message here? And it came to me, you have choice. I was not a victim. I had choice. I could have said, this is not what I want. And I
Right.
didn't. I had choice in the moment. And not only did I have it in the moment, I had it in like 5 or 6 different times during the hour. I had choice.
No.
So that was my realization that I'm not a victim. I have choice.
Like, can you give us an example? Like, I mean, let's use
Yeah,
that
I
as an
can.
example, just
Okay.
to get a little more deep into it. So what were you the victim of that you were
Okay.
imagining? And then what was your
I will.
choice that you had?
Okay, so I had an appointment with this body worker, and I had imagined this great session, you know, where we get all these cell memories, and so I wanted to get changed to go on the massage table, and he said, no, you don't have to do that. So I had choice right in that moment. I had choice to say, well, this is what I want. So he said, you know, what's the problem? And I told him. And then we went further, and he wanted to give me some exercises. And I had choice to say, no, this isn't what I want. And I went along with it. And then I wanted to change out of my jeans. And, but I just went along with it because I do have a belief that I should be open to what the universe is bringing me because, you know, I want to be open to messages and to learning. So I kept going. And when it was all over, I was angry because, you know, I didn't get what I wanted. And then when I sat with it, I realized that there were all those times that I had choice. I said it 2 or 3 times that I'd like to change. I'm not comfortable to do these exercises in my jeans. And each time he says, oh, no, don't worry about it. But I had choice. I could have said no. So when I really look at it, this is a huge pattern in my life where I won't speak up and say at that time, and then I'll get angry and blame the other person. I do that with my children all the time.
And what you're talking about is extremely subtle. And I think what happens in the subtlety of it, it builds until it gets to an angry point, and then you end up blaming someone else.
Exactly.
When really, when you look at it, at every point, you had a choice.
I had choice.
Okay, I have a hard question for you, maybe. Going back to the legal system example that Nikki Hayes brought up. Okay, what happens if you get pulled over by the cops and they arrest you for no good reason? Put handcuffs on you and whatever. I'm just
That's
it's a
okay.
hypothetical situation.
You know, I
What
like
do you
that
do then? What's
question.
your choice there?
Well, they're the police, so I actually would go with them.
What do you mean?
Well, you know,
Well,
sometimes
you don't have a choice.
No, I have
In this
choi-
particular
no,
example.
I do have choice. I could fight and scream and cause a scene, or I can go happily. I
Right.
still have choice,
Okay.
and I think I would.
Okay.
And I would trust that the right thing would come out. And maybe I wouldn't, but I would hope that I would.
It's really a huge conversation because when you talk about NLP or words, often we use words that aren't really the true meaning of the word. So even when you say happy, happy means something different to everybody.
everybody.
Happy to some people means being passive, and I'm not stating my opinion. Whereas
Yeah.
I think what you're talking about is our own, in which this fellow that we interviewed the other day, Don Jose Ruiz, talks about his only responsibility is to keep himself happy. When he does that, he's actually being the kind of person he wants to be, which is responsible and loving and caring, and he can do real service.
Right.
But if you're not keeping yourself happy,
No.
you're actually doing a disservice to everyone else around you.
So, Lori, we're getting down to the last couple of minutes here, but what would you recommend to somebody out there? Because you've been through this,
Yes,
I don't want to say
medicine-free
journey, but
for
it's
years.
which is pretty cool. What would you recommend to people who are maybe listening to this and they're thinking they're depressed, or maybe they have been diagnosed, maybe they're on medication? What would you recommend an approach for people to take?
Well, listen to yourself, listen to your body, sit quietly and listen. And there's just a lot of things. If you want help, I have a belief that the teacher will appear. If you truly want it, the teacher will appear. Or someone or something. I found many things along my journey to get me here, and I'm still learning. I'm still like everybody else.
Yeah, it's kind of
So-
it's kind of a magical world. This is we think we understand the way the world works, but we really don't. But I
Yeah.
think if you pay attention to those synchronicities, I think,
Yeah.
those are your kind of breadcrumbs
Yeah.
along the road.
Deep, Hugh.
Huh? Yeah.
Mhm.
See, that's what happens. Okay, Lori, anything else you want to leave? Anything else you want to leave people with, or?
I
Yeah,
do
how can they get in
training
contact
process-
with you, Lori,
Yes, I have
or-
a website, LoriVerbeekHolisticHealing.com.
And we
And
should
I'd be-
let's spell that for people, just so they.
Yeah, Lori, Verbeek, Verbeek, holistichealing.com.
Okay, and you do the journey process.
I do the journey along with other things, the work of Byron Katie.
Or Katie, as she's just called.
Yes.
They call her by her last name.
Yes.
Okay, Lori Verbeek, holistichealing.com. So I
Yes.
guess that's, for people down in the Winona.
And we
or
do phone
Hamilton.
processes, so
Yeah.
it can be for anywhere.
Exactly. So if somebody's listening and they're really resonating with you,
Yes.
which is what's going to happen, then they can get in touch by the website. So that's great. Thanks for
Thank you.
doing
Thank
this.
you.
Okay. Well, we're going to just continue on here with Liquid Lunch.
Yeah.
We're going to play something, and then we're going to come back with Tom Rand with his book, Kick the Fossil Fuel Habit, right after this. Liquid Lunch, ThatChannel.com.